Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Attorney General, for your leadership and for your testimony this morning. One of the benefits of coming in late is getting to listen to the probing questions of my colleagues, and one of them was Senator Feinstein's question about the trust in corporations that over the last 15 years apparently have been more active in acquiring weapons. And just a few questions. One is that the proposal by the President would sort of pierce the corporate veil and require the individuals who are actually obtaining these weapons to run a background check. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. Yes, Senator.
And are these generally, these corporation trusts set up to avoid limitations on owning automatic weapons, machine guns, or do they are applying increasingly with just handguns and what we would consider to be personalized weapons?
Well, typically we see trusts and other corporate entities being used to purchase the weapons that are not handguns, that typically one can go to a dealer and purchase fairly quickly and easily, but weapons that are on the under the National Firearms Act. They usually are the short-barreled shotguns, certain types of machine guns, as well as silencers.
Right. Now, it just strikes me somewhat ironically because the Second Amendment is seen, and I think appropriately so, as a individual right that Americans have, and to create corporations and trusts to be, and it's not alone in this area, having been a lawyer myself for a little bit, corporations and trusts are often created to evade, evolve, or illegally do something that directly can't be done. So I think this is a very sensible step and reflects the thoughtful way that you and the President have proposed these very sensible improvements on background checks. Another issue that was raised by my colleague from Oklahoma, and it was a very good one too, is the issue of engaged in the business. And from your answer, you rejected a categorical, the arbitrary number of weapons, and you reflected the opinions of the courts interpreting the Constitution. Is that the I assume that's the rationale, to ensure that this is constitutionally consistent with the court decisions?
Yes, Senator. We essentially have crafted the guidance to reflect what the courts have said defines who is engaged in the business of dealing firearms. And the courts have said that there is no set number. Certainly there can be large numbers of firearms transferred, but if someone in fact has a collection and is simply selling that, that would not make them subject to the licensure requirement. But if someone may be selling only a few guns, but if they sell them repetitively, if they hold themselves out as a dealer, that's a very, very different scenario. Essentially, it's not limited to where one operates, but to what one does that determines whether one is a dealer or not. And so we've collected the guidance based on court cases around the country into a document that we hope will be clear and easily understandable for people who have those questions.
So this is not, as I say, an arbitrary decision. It is a reflection of the court's view on the Second Amendment rights of the individual Americans.
Yes, Senator.
One other general issue, too, is that the effect of these regulations overall, clearly in a very gross sense, two populations: people who are exercising their rights for self-defense, for recreation, for hobbyists, etc., and people who are trying to obtain a weapon for illicit purposes. The effect of the President's regulations on both groups, my hope is that no impediments for those who honestly seek legitimate use of firearms, the right to do so, and reasonable constraints on those people who have illicit motives. Is that your?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney General.
Thank you, Senator.